adventurers, and welcome back to the Dragon's Lair. Today we will be discussing the ranger with the sword, Gilan. So let's jump right into it, shall we? Before we do, I have to say that Chill unfortunately was not able to make it today, so it's just me for this. So bear with me while I do what I have to make sure that this video is as good as it can be. Starting off with Gilan's strength. Well, I've already said that he knows how to use a sword. I'm gonna go ahead and clear myself and say spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. Gilan was trained with a sword at a young age, so that's gonna count for something towards his strength score. You also have to consider that it does take a decent amount of strength to be able to use a bow pretty well. I know bows are more dexterity-based weapons, but in order to draw a bow back, it does take a decent amount of strength to be able to draw it and hold it. So, all of that being said, I'm going to say that his strength score is not huge, but also not non-existent. I'm going to say 12 to 16. I would probably split the difference and go 14. Moving into dexterity. This is something that rangers are a little more akin to. So, dexterity is going to be a little more important to them. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. Gilan was one of the best stealth movers, I'll say, that the Ranger Corps had. So that's going to count for something. Then you pair that with his use of the bow and how good he is with that, as well as his use of a sword, which can also be a dexterity-based weapon in D&D. Along with his ability to move quickly in combat, and you've got yourself a pretty dexterity-based ranger. All in all, I'm going to say 18 to 20 for that score, just because of how important it is to him and how good he is with it. Moving into Constitution. Rangers are trained to be able to go long periods of time with little sleep, little food, under constant stress, and constant movement. So, do with that what you will. That being said, new Rangers, which Gilan was the newest Ranger, when we first met him, new Rangers are often given easier fiefs to deal with. Gilan was no exception. So, while he has that training and those skills, he also doesn't typically use it. So, do with that what you will. All in all, depending on what take of him you want to use, I'm going to say his score is somewhere between really kind of 8 to 14. Moving into intelligence. He knows how to strategize, right? He's pretty good at it. Spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. He's one of the best strategists that the Ranger Corps has, especially later on after he takes over the Ranger Corps when Crowley retires. So taking that into consideration, I'm going to say that his intelligence is somewhere between 16 to 18, just because he's really good at strategizing, so much so to where one of the newest Rangers becomes the leader of the Ranger Corps at a relatively young age. To reiterate, I'm saying somewhere between, I forgot what I just said, 16 to 20, I think I said 14 to 18. Really, 14 to 20 just kind of makes sense, just depending on your take of him. How important you think the strategy is. The strategy is for Gilan. Moving into wisdom. This is a score where I think he lacks a little bit, especially in the beginning. Right? So spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. When we first meet him, he makes a mistake of leaving Will and Horace alone to their own devices, and that subjugates them to what is an attack by bandits, right? Then, later, he leaves Will, Horace, and Evelyn alone, and, we get a 2-book trip as to what exactly went wrong there. But later on, he does seem to learn from his mistakes, and he does kind of make up for it with some of the other things that he does along the way. So depending on your take of him, I'm going to say that his wisdom score is going to be somewhere between 6 and 16. It's a pretty big jump, but it's supposed to reflect the jump he makes between when we first meet him and when he eventually takes over the Ranger Corps. Moving into charisma. He doesn't do a whole lot of talking. That's kind of from Holt's training, right? But when he does talk, spoiler alert, 3, 2, 1, we should be good. He does a good job of getting people to understand where he's coming from and convincing them to be on his side, right? And that's pretty important. Especially for someone that's supposed to lead a group of people into doing what needs to be done and getting to the good solution. Now, depending on your take of him, whether he's the silent type that Holt trained or someone that speaks rarely but speaks well, his charisma score might be anywhere between 10 to 14, possibly 16. I would probably stick at 14. Moving into the straightforward build. Gilan is a human, or so we're led to believe. Yeah, no, for the straightforward build, Gilan is a human. +1 to every ability score would be nice, but not necessary. I would prefer to have +1 to 2 different ability scores, dexterity more than likely, and then intelligence and or strength, depending on your take of Gilan. Possibly charisma, depending on your take. And then the proficiency in stealth, which is generally good to have, as well as the feat. Now for the feat, you're going to want to go fighting initiate, and you're going to want to take the archery fighting style. Then, for the class, you're going to want to go fighter and take the dueling fighting style with, where is it? Interception being a second, if you would rather have that, depending on your campaign. From there, for the specific fighting, subclass, you're going to want to go samurai, which focuses mainly on not dying, which is good, right? Early levels, they gain the ability to give themselves advantage, which is nice, as well as temporary HP. Then later on, they gain the ability to create cover stories for themselves, and the ability to mimic people pretty well. Then at 17th level, they also gain the ability to essentially not die, right? When they're dropped to 0 hit points, they can take an immediate turn in combat, which they can use to attack, or someone smarter might use it to pop a healing potion, or if they have spells, cast a healing spell on them, depending on whether or not you would like to multi-class. So it's that sort of thing, right? It's really good for not dying. Moving into the conceptual build, I could see Gilan as a dryad or a drow, right? That being said, because of the general, nature theme of Rangers, I think Wood Elves make a little more sense. But that's my opinion. That's why I gave you there are three different races to choose from. As for the class, I went Rogue. Specifically, Rogue Assassin, right? So, what that does is they gain advantage on anyone that hasn't gone in combat yet. So any newcomers into the initiative order, or if they go first in combat, they have advantage on anyone they would attack, which works really well with sneak attack. And at this point in time, it is important to note that you can use sneak attack with a bow and arrow, right? That's what would allow for the ranged, ranger sort of aspect of this to be paired well with Rogue in D&D, right? So from there, did I misspeak? I misspoke. Samurai don't get the ability to create false identities for themselves. That's the rogue here. Samurai instead get bonuses to charisma checks and wisdom saves. I got those two confused. I do apologize for that. I will drop down in the description below to clarify what exactly I got wrong. But yes, the assassins gain the ability to create cover stories for themselves, right? As well as the ability to mimic people. I do apologize for getting that mistaken. Unfortunately, I am on my own today. Chill would have been able to catch that immediately. Then at 17th level, the assassin gains the ability to, essentially, when they surprise someone, this does not mean they have advantage on the attack, but like in a surprise round, right? The person that the assassin rogue attacks has to make a constitution saving throw or take double damage. Now, the way this is written would imply that if you rolled a natural 20, the damage would be quadrupled, although the DM would have the final say on that, but I personally would give it to them. That being said, I'm not your DM, so what I would give you doesn't really matter in this case. Into the backstory. Gilan grew up the son of a battle master. Now, his father wanted him to become more than just a knight, so he had him apprentice underneath a ranger. This lucky ranger was Halt. During his apprenticeship, Gilan realized that he really liked being a ranger and decided to stick with it. And one year during the Rangers Conference, he came across Halt and his new apprentice. That is where Gilan's story begins. As for the items and animals, Gilan would have access to the Ranger Cloak, the Ranger's Oak Leaf, as well as a Ranger's Horse. Go ahead and check out the Will video if you would like to know a little bit more about those, as I've already broken them down. That is all I have for you fine adventurers today. I do apologize one final time for misspeaking there, and as I said, I will leave a little note down in the description below clarifying exactly what went wrong there. Be on the lookout for my next video, which will be on Halt. If you can't possibly wait until then, feel free to come check out my Discord or come hang out on Twitch. Other than that, I will catch you all later.